Well, I was born here in Golden, Colorado. I can't recall any particular fascination as a child that I had in science.
Okay. How about who was your grandfather and what was his business?
My grandfather was Adolf Coors Sr. He had a small brewery in Golden, Colorado.
Did your father work for your grandfather on the brewery? Was your father part of the business?
My father ran the business. He was in total charge.
Did your family expect that you might join and be a brewer?
I think it was assumed so. I never gave it a second thought,
Did you want to be a brewer?
not particularly.
What did you want to be?
A doctor.
A doctor.
Mhm.
So, what would your family say? Okay, go to medical school.
Well, I know my father wanted me to be an engineer, chemical engineer. And that's what I became.
So, where did you study? Where did you go to college?
Princeton University.
And what year did you graduate?
1938.
Bill, why don't you tell her a little bit about going to Phillips Exeter Academy?
I didn't have a pair of long pants. My father gave me a check when I left for prep school, $1,000. It was to house me, feed me, pay my tuition, and buy my clothes. First thing I did with it was buy myself a pair of long pants. I couldn't see me walking around the Exeter campus as the only kid in a pair of knickers.
Do you want to tell her about your insecurities going to Exeter and meeting John Ferguson?
Well, I was not well mature emotionally. I was very lonely, very homesick, and had a lot of trouble associating with the boys who were friendly. I was definitely a member of the campus nerd group. Joined the chess club.
So, did you like it better then when you had the chess club and felt more a part of the school?
Well, I had an interesting experience. It really probably did more for me than anything that's ever happened. At Exeter, to graduate, you had to have at least 1 year of Latin, and the second year of either Latin or Greek. I chose second year Latin. Found myself in an advanced class, studying Julius Caesar. Conquest of the Gaul. Still remember the opening. Omnia Gallia in tres partes divis est. My instructor in that class was to me a monster. Was abusive if nothing else. He'd refer to me as a crow among swans. And one day, I'd been told by a couple of classmates whom I was trying desperately to cultivate, and they told me to get lost. They didn't want me around anymore. I was crushed. Was in my Latin teacher's class. Name was Norman Hatch, and he was particularly rough on me, and I couldn't stop it. Started at my feet, I just welled up this wave of grief, came right up, and I just broke out bawling in the classroom. Terribly embarrassing. And I just sobbed most of the class, rest of the class. When it was over, I was on my way down a little pathway from the main building, the grill, to get a cup of tea. Somebody was coming down behind me. They put an arm around my shoulder. It was Norman Hatch. I had spent hours trying to devise the perfect crime that got him off the campus, one way or another. I just hated him with a passion. When that arm went around me, I just left like that. And I realized he couldn't be doing a better thing for me. He was giving me compassion and support. Changed my whole outlook on life. One of my greatest regrets was never getting back to the school. To tell him how I appreciated what he had done for me. I've carried that message all the way through. All I ever wanted for my father was my father's arm around me. I never got it. I did a remarkable job. And some 60 years, 50 years rather, that I worked for the company. A lot to do with my relationship with the employees of the company.
You want to share how your father expected you to go to Cornell and how you ended up at Princeton due to Norm Carter?
Yeah. I was entered in Cornell. Cornell was my uncle's was the alma mater for most of the males in the family. My father and my two uncles went there, three uncles. Exeter, I went there, but was there for 3 years before I even knew that they had fraternities on the campus. I was asked to join one. I felt success, great success, recognition. I had two brothers at Cornell at the time, and by the end of my senior year at Exeter, I'd had enough fraternities. I didn't like having my friends picture me. I didn't like the standards that they used. If you're an athlete, you were automatic. Senior year, delegations from my father's fraternity at Cornell and my brother's fraternity from Cornell showed up on the campus of Exeter to sign me up for membership. I just rebelled. My roommate at Exeter, who still survives at 102. His name was Norm Carter. His father had been a very prominent Princetonian, and Norm suggested we go down to Princeton. The impression would take me in. And they took me in. I roomed with Norm for 4 years down there, Princeton.
You want to tell them how you met Albert Einstein at Princeton?
Well, I was casual. He looked like a wild man with his hair in all directions. And he was in the school there of advanced studies. And he lived off campus. He ate his meals in the lunch hall. And one day, as I was going into the hall, he was coming out. He looked at me with his puzzled look on his face and asked in very broken English if I could tell him where he was going. He didn't know whether he was coming or going to lunch. I told him, and we shook hands. That was my acquaintance with Einstein.
Did he have a strong handshake?
Yeah,
You graduated with a degree in chemical engineering,
yeah.
and then what was your choice? Did you want to go back to being part of the brewery, or what were your thoughts?
Well, it was at the height of the Depression. Jobs were very hard to find. The maximum salary for any college graduate was $100 a month. I had a job waiting for me in Golden, and put me at an advantage of everybody who didn't have a job. Chemical engineering school at Princeton was virtually run by DuPont. And they hired me. When I graduated, I went back to Golden. Couldn't face my father. DuPont's probably still looking for me.
So, what was your first job at the brewery?
Well, one of the family properties at that point was the Coors Porcelain Company. I remember my father saying, when I went into his office to ask for a job assignment, he offered me $200 a month. And then I want you to go over to the pottery and do something about those losses. 50% of everything we started to make over there ended up on the dump. I want you to do something about those losses, but you are not to change a thing. So So for 2 years, I just wandered around. Didn't change a thing.
And what changed everything with the phone call? What was the phone call that changed everything?
Well, first important is the fact that we had one competitor, horse person, and that was the champion spark plug people. The war was heating up. And Champion had more than they could handle with the demand for aviation spark plugs. They wanted to get out of their porcelain business. So we bought the whole thing from them for $10,000, including a secret process they had developed for the formulation of ceramic items. They had one customer for whom they made a highly specialized insulator. It was the only insulator that they were making, only customer they had. They turned that over to us. And about, I would say, close to $500,000 worth of tooling that they put into it. This is a special insulator they were making for Alice Chalmers. I was looking for something to do and make myself useful instead of just walking around, not changing anything. So I grabbed onto the insulator, began making them, and having a field day. About 1 year later, I got a message. I didn't even have a desk or a telephone while I was working. But the reception at the Gorse Porcelain found me at work on an insulator. Said, "There's a phone call for you." They won't speak to anybody else. So I followed her into the office, got on the phone. A voice introduced himself as Rick Condit, working for the Lawrence Radiation Laboratory. He said, "We need insulators." And he told me this story of grief, is how all of the main insulator companies, such as General Electric and Westinghouse, all quoted them in terms of months delivery. he said, we couldn't wait that long. We have several of the Alice Chalmers electoral people consulting with us. They know about your insulators. I said, maybe you could make. I said, well, our delivery, if we can make it, it's just the 5 days it takes to get the item through the tunnel kill. So he said, I'll send you a drawing. You're not supposed to copy it, show it to anybody, or talk to anybody about this. It's a very secret project. So I got the drawing in the mail. Unfortunately, an easy item to make. Champion had been supplying us with the material we needed to make the Alex Chalmers insulators with all the material I had. So I just used it to provide Lawrence Radiation with their insulators. And I had them on the way in 5 days.
That's amazing.
And those insulators made the development of the isotope separators, or concentration, whatever you want to call it. I didn't have any idea what was going on. Our insulators had worked for Lawrence Radiation. And they had developed the isotope separator. Turned it over to people like General Electric or Westinghouse. And of course, they supplied their insulator. Their insulator wouldn't work.
Okay.
The insulating companies in the insulator business, like General Electric and Westinghouse, probably Ohio Brass.
What were your insulators made from?
Material supplied to us by Champion. They had licensed us to a secret development where they took a ceramic slurry known as slip, spray dried it, came out with tiny little beads. They pour like water. So they shared with me their specifications for a spray dryer. Which I made mostly from scrap metal. That I found in a local tin shop in Golden. didn't work very well. Third rebuild, it worked well enough.
So how many of these insulators did you make in 5 days?
I haven't any idea.
But thousands? 1,000 or more?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah.
There are thousands of them still at Oak Ridge.
When you were talking about the spray dryer, you didn't mention it was the isostatic spray dryer. Did you want to mention that as being part of the process to put that name on it?
Take the spray dried material, put it in a rubber sack, and then subject that to about 10,000 pounds per square inch. Compress it. It came out of a block. It was machinable. And made the insulators from that. The question I have yet to be asked, which amazes me, why did our insulators work
That's a good question.
and the other insulators didn't work? And the answer lies in why was Champion making insulators for Alice Chalmers. Nothing about Alice Chalmers insulators that was a challenge to any of the insulator manufacturers. And it dawned on me. Everything was so secret. There were no specifications. We weren't allowed to keep a blueprint. Anything on the blueprint that might identify it. I do not know exactly the what constituted the material the Champion was supplying us. They are known in the industry as bodies, ceramic bodies. I am making an assumption that Alice Chalmers used their insulators for mercury arc rectifier. Of alternating current, provide electric current to the aluminum industry. And that they had tried this, all speculation, but they had tried various insulator manufactured unsuccessfully. I did not know at that time that the insulators supplied by General Electric wouldn't work. Nobody was talking. Nobody said anything. You take your regular porcelain insulator, you get it hot enough, and put a heavy enough voltage across it. It'll eventually fail. Porcelain is made by General Electric, Westinghouse. Pretty much slam bang thing. The main ingredients are kaolin. Of course, they're porous, and to combat the pores, they have to get a glassy interior. And for that purpose, they use a very common mineral known as felspar. There are two varieties, orthoclase. Primarily potassium based. And the other, lagioclase, soda based. Either one of those things is not good for insulators because the electricity will find its way from atom to atom. And the other thing they need is something to make it look like clay, act like clay. They call it ball clay. I've had this weird feeling, realization that that little insulator shop that I was in charge of at the chemical portion, making no changes except my own, was the only facility in the whole Western world that you could manufacture insulators that could withstand what was required of them by the isotope separation. I'm probably the only man in the world who knows that story.
When did you first know how important your work was?
When Lawrence Radiation Design was taken over by one of the electrical companies. They supplied their own insulators. And they didn't work. And the risk sort of fell in on us.
You went more than 70 years before the Department of Energy recognized your work?
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Oh, for me, the years go by awful fast.
When did the people in Oak Ridge did they call and say they work? Were they pleased? Back, the 5 days after you delivered them in 5 days, when did they let you know they worked?
They didn't.
They didn't? Oh my goodness. You didn't hear from them again?
We just got orders for insulators. We had the entire Coors Porcelain facility converted to insulator development, manufactured, just to keep up to date.
Wow.
Keep pace with Oak Ridge demand.
So have you seen an insulator? Have they sent you pictures? Or did you send all the insulators off so you don't have any left?
That's right.
So you have accomplished a lot. That was just 1943. But you also went on in your career to be very inventive. Can you tell us about your work on the aluminum can?
Our Golden Brewery was a shipping brewery. Our average customer lived more than 1,000 miles away from us. 83% of our beer was in cans. The only thing we could replace the cans with were returnable bottles. They weighed so much, they were so heavy, that the freight on them to get them to and from the marketplace was just too aggressive. You look back, there were cans strewn all over the place. And the soft drink industry, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, and the like, and the brewing industry were definitely opposed to taking any responsibility for their containers. So the green people got into the act and began trying to get legislation passed state by state, which called Ban the Can. Would have been disastrous to us. Well, I was economically forced to find an alternative. It was the aluminum can.
So you came up with the idea of the refund.
Of the what?
You came up with the idea of recycling, of offering a penny for
Yeah.
each can brought back.
We took it even one step farther. We developed a continuous casting machine. called the Blockcaster. We built a mill in San Antonio. It was quite a threat to the aluminum companies like Alcoa. As we could convert remelted aluminum cans back into sheet material cheaper than they could.
He's something, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So do you still enjoy beer?
Oh, sure.
That's great. Well, it must be good for you, because not many people live to 101.
I'm very fortunate.